Hey everyone, I'm here again to talk about Volume 2 of Trapped in a Dating Sim. Um, this volume is covered in the anime from episode 6, and I believe it should cover all the way up until the end of the first season, which should be episode 12. Um, not much has changed, if anything at all, really, so far between the novel and the anime. It's the anime has more or less been pretty good with everything that's in here. Um, it's been more or less the same. Now, just want to put a little alert at the beginning of the video. There will be spoilers for those of you who only watch the anime. So, going forward, um, if you haven't read the novel or at least some of the manga, because I believe the manga is still ahead of the anime right now, then you will be spoiled on what's going to happen later on in this volume. Um, so yeah, volume two. Volume two more or less starts off with a festival that's going on in the school right now. Um, Leon has opened up a cafe and he's running it with Angelica and Olivia, as well as his two friends Raymond and Daniel. They're running a cafe. Leon's reasons for running the cafe is for to attract girls so that he can try and get a marriage partner. The same old, more or less. Um, and right next to their cafe is the prince and his group, as well as Marie. They're also running the cafe. Um, Their cafe, however, is extremely overpriced for what they're serving. um, but yeah, the prologue is more or less just about the whole festival and everybody setting up, and more or less Leon and his group doing what they have to do for the cafe. As they step out into the hallway, they see the prince handing out flyers for the cafe that he's running. Um, so Leon and them take interest, and after a little back and forth with the prince, they end up following the prince back to his cafe and seeing the state that it's in, how everything's overpriced for just like tea and snacks. It's severely overpriced, but that's because Marie sets the prices because now she has to take care of the princes in his group because of what happened in the first volume with the whole duel and them being disinherited from their houses and all of that. So now she has to take care of all the prince and his group as well as herself. So she has to try and make money, but with the cafe she's overcharging. So that's more or less the prologue and how it starts. With chapter one, we move on to the introduction of the queen, Mylene. She more or less visiting the festival. She's the prince's mother. Um, she came more or less to check it out and to try and like get back at Leon in a way because he did have a duel with her son, and he did kind of embarrass him, and everything that happened because of that was due to Leon. So she came to the school more or less for the festival and to try and like you know just get back at him in a way, but not too serious, but just because that was her son. So she ends up walking around the festival. She notices how the females in the school are, how they're very privileged. Number one, um, they more or less get away with everything, and it's not really a good look, more or less. So as she's going around, she sees all of this. She calls for Angelica to come, escort her around, show her around, and take her to the cafe that Leon is running. So she does that. Her and Angelica end up, looking around, and then when they head back to the cafe, Leon's cafe, they end up meeting a scene where one of the noble girls is in the cafe and she's destroying everything. She's talking down to Leon, she's stepping on him, she's making a big scene, whatever. So the queen wants to step in, but before she can step in, Olivia steps up, and then more or less the girl, the earl, well, not the earl, but the girl, sorry, she's the daughter of an earl. Her name is Stephanie. She more or less knocks Olivia down, not in the physical sense, but like with what she says. She more or less lets her know that she's a commoner and she has no right to talk and all of that stuff. So now Angelica steps in. She gets upset. Um, More or less, they go back and forth with Angelica and Stephanie, and then the girl tells Angelica because now that you're the people who used to follow you left you, you're sticking with this commoner. Like she's taking their place, but like you don't see her as anything but like a pet. So because you look down on commoners. So when she said that, Olivia kind of got hurt and she ran off, and then the queen stepped in. Now with the queen stepping in, she didn't know that that was the queen. The queen is more or less incognito, but not only that, um, she has never met the queen at her ranking, her family's ranking, being an earl. They're not high enough rank to actually meet, the higher tier, like the king and whatnot. So she doesn't even know what the queen looks like. So now that she, now that the queen has stepped in, and then the girl Stephanie, she didn't know that it was the queen. She more or less had her group and um, their lovers. I don't know if I said this in the first video, the last video, but lovers are more or less like um, you can kind of categorize them like how do I say it? They they're the lovers of the females more or less, but only certain tiers of nobility have lovers, the females only. What happens with lovers is the girls go out and they have their husbands, right? They get married, whatever, but that's just for political reasons. Their lovers are their lovers who they actually, you can say they love, but you can also kind of put them like slaves in a sense. Um, they they're they're like half elves and stuff like that. But aside from that, they was beating on Leon, and Leon was looking for a probable cause to more or less get them out of the cafe. With them attacking the queen and not knowing who the queen was, Leon, after what happened in the last volume, he moved up a rank and he had to go meet the queen and the king and all that. He knew who the queen was. So with that, that gave him a probable cause to, go wild and start beating on the lovers, which technically, um, for anybody to beat up on one of the nobility females lovers, that's a serious offense, a crime. Like you can't do that. But with them attacking the queen, that gives Leon reason to do that. So he's, it's fine. So with him going wild and them not being able to stop him, Angelica's like, there's only one person who can stop Leon from doing all of this, and that would be his master slash professor, the teacher, the tea teacher, his master. So she goes and gets him, and he stops Leon from his rampage, and then more or less they get, they go back to beat the queen coming in, and she starts lecturing Leon and whatnot. But the lecture kind of wasn't really a lecture. Um, Leon ends up, kind of flirting with her, and she kind of falls for him a little bit because, truth be told, she, in a sense, she doesn't really love her husband like that. It's more, like I said, political reasons. And though she has a son, her son only really comes to her when he needs something. So, in a sense, Leon was kind of like the only man that kind of, even though she was older, he's the only one that kind of flirted with her and stuff. So she kind of liked that a little bit. But while doing so, the prince comes into the cafe and he smacks Leon over the head like, "The hell you doing? That's my mother." So that happens, and then he drags the queen away back to his cafe. Now, while all of this is happening, Olivia, before the whole fight thing happened, this is before the scene with Stephanie and all of them in the cafe. Olivia had went out to advertise the cafe. So when she did that, she met up with this girl called Carla, and Carla wanted to be introduced to Leon. So after the prince dragged the queen over to his cafe, Carla more or less came in and she was like, well, before Carla came in, after everything calmed down, Olivia came back, whatever. Carla came in and she more or less came to Leon with a request to more or less save her territory because it's under attack by pirates, so she wanted Leon to help her out. So when doing that, it was more or less a trick the way they set it up because with the way she came to Leon, it was like a request, and being a request, he couldn't turn it down, or else because of everything that happened, it would make not only him look bad, but Angelica because it's like you went up in ranks, you did all of this, you're more than capable. Why are you turning this down? So it'll look bad in the whole nobility, type thing setting. So he agrees to it for now, but we move on to the next part, which is more or less the bike racing part of the festival. This is one of the activities, the main activities of the festival. They made the cafe to build up funds and for Leon to get a marriage, look for girls for marriage partners, whatever. But the main thing that he really wanted to do was the whole race, bike race part. It was more for to gain back funds. With him and Luxion, Luxion being what he is, he's able to 100% tell you how the races are gonna go. So Leon would bet on said races and then just win back all his money and make a fortune out of that. So when he did that, he ended up, betting on Jilk. Jilk being one of the princes, one of the greenhead guy in the princes group. He was the representative of the first years for the racing. Now he's pretty good. He's pretty much the best person in that year with for the for the bike races. Um, Now the problem with what happened with him was like the prince. He also had a fiance, Clarice. Now she's big in the whole bike racing thing. More or less, her family runs like has a big racetrack, and they have people that more or less come and train and whatnot at their place. So they're big on that. And he joke was like a he's the best person in the first years with the racing. Now, with the whole racing thing going on, like I said, her family being big as they are with the whole racing thing, they played a big part in the racing. So a lot of the people that worked under Clarice who were racing, Clarice had them, more or less beat on Jill during the races. So now Jill ended up getting injured, his ribs. He broke one of his ribs because of all the attacks he had during his race. He ended up winning that race though, but he couldn't continue on with the next couple of races. So they cut to the part with after Jilk's race, and he's in recovery, and Clarice comes in and she's more or less saying she's gonna keep his life miserable because of everything that happened. The whole problem with with him with Jilk and Clarice was more or less Clarice wanted to talk to him and find out like what's going on. How come you just dumped me like that and you're going after Marie? And Jilk more or less he never talked to her. He just ignored her and he just let it drag on. So now she's really mad at him and she's just taking it out physically. So they needed somebody to replace Jilk for the races. So more or less they kind of forced it on Leon. um, at this point in time, nobody in the school likes Leon because of what happened in the first volume and the bets that they took, and he more or less drove a lot of them poor. They lost a lot of money. So a lot of people hate him not only because of the bet, but because of what he did. So Leon ends up taking over for Jill, and he tells Jill that you're gonna owe me big time for this. So um, he ends up going through the races. With the help of Luxion, obviously he was able to win. He tampered with the bike. Luxion more or less took control, and he took control of the bike. Before his race though, he did have Luxion check out the bike. They had already tampered with his bike, but Luxion fixes everything. So yeah, he ends up racing. Same thing happens. They attack him, but in this case, it wasn't Clarice's people who attacked him. It was everybody else because he's hated, and they wanted, they was pissed off that he took their money. So he got attacked. He ended up passing everybody. He catches up to Clarice's group, who's in the lead, cause, and then he ends up, passing them, winning the race. That's that. So now we cut back to Leon, and after the whole thing. Oh wait, before that, during the races, Stephanie comes back again. At this time, Olivia and Angelica are cheering on Leon. They're like the only ones who are doing it. Stephanie ends up, you know, doing again, causing trouble with Angelica and Olivia. She again calls Olivia a pet, and Olivia gets pissed off and she runs off. Well, she cries and whatever, runs off. Angelica is now pissed off because she keeps coming back, so she ends up, jumping on her and beating her and whatnot. So this happened. Um, Olivia starts questioning whether they can be friends, so she has a talk with Leon. Um, Leon tells her that it's more or less it'll be rough because of their standings, her being a commoner and Angelica being a duke's daughter. It'll be tough. But then he goes on to say some things about Angelica that pisses off Olivia, which he then goes to say, well, if you feel like she's not that kind of person, then just go talk to her. So she determines herself that she will try to talk to Angelica one more time. So we cut back to a little later during the day, that night. She's setting herself up, getting ready to go talk to Angelica when she's in her room and she gets a knock at the door. It ends up being Carla. So Carla comes in and she tells her that she more or less wants her to participate with Leon in subjugating the pirates that's running around her territory. Before she can do anything, behind Carla is Stephanie. Stephanie was the one who set up everything, who's been behind the whole pirate thing and whatnot. So she comes in and she again starts harassing Olivia, and then she's trying to make a point that Olivia's a common and she can't do nothing, and that Leon and Angelica just have her around because Leon probably just has her around because as bad as his reputation is, he probably just wants her body or whatever. And Angelica just has her. She doesn't see her as a friend. She's just a pet. So, um, while this is going on, Stephanie has other people come in and destroy Olivia's room. Now Olivia, after everything that's happened already, she's going down. She's feeling really sad. She feels like she doesn't belong. She's starting to question whether Leon and Angelica are really her friends or not. So now we get to the part with the pirates and Leon. The next day, he's standing at the deck. Standing at the deck. He's at the he's waiting for Olivia, and well, not Olivia. He's waiting for Carla because now he's gonna go, subjugate the pirates, whatever, finish it up. But while waiting for Carla, he ends up spotting Olivia coming with her with luggage. So Carla's more or less treating Olivia pretty bad, and he can tell. He sees it, but Carla's trying to stick to like this whole good girl type thing. So when she notices Leon, she had Olivia carrying everything. She quickly grabs her stuff, but Leon's like, I can see what's going on already. So she quickly grabs her stuff. They walk to Leon, and she explains that Olivia's gonna be traveling with them. So as they're getting ready to leave, um, Brad and Greg from the Prince's group ends up coming with them because Carla also asks them for help. So they all get on board. They leave to go, subjugate the pirates. So they're there. They're going towards Carla's territory, and as they're going, they end up meeting with some of the pirates. Now, what happens is, what Carla didn't realize was that Leon was really strong, and these pirates were nothing. So he quickly takes care of them with no help from Brad and Greg because they they were more or less pampered, and this is their first real battle, and they didn't like when Leon told them, "Let's go, let's go get rid of the pirates." They kind of froze up. So Leon ended up taking care of it by himself. Now, in doing this, Carla starts panicking because she didn't think he could do that, and she didn't realize how strong he was. So he took out the pirates. He takes them, prisoner because in for Leon, he kind of set a rule for himself. He won't kill anybody if he doesn't have to. He's not ready for that yet, as he says. So he doesn't want to, just kill people needlessly. So he captured the pirates, he takes their armors and their ships, and they continue on to Carla's territory. Now, all this time, Carla's panicking because she's like, she didn't set up for this. She was betting on more or less the pirates coming, beating Leon, taking them prisoner and whatnot, and she'd be the only one let go because she's in leagues with the pirates. So after all of that goes down, they get to her territory, and at this point, she's decided that she's gonna blame everything on Olivia. In doing so, she can, be like, "Oh, Olivia blew it out of proportion. That's not what, you know, I never said that we had pirates." And but, all that comes back at her because Leon is there, and he's like, "No, this was an official request from you. You was the one who set it up. You told me that this was what happened." So they get to her family's place. Her father doesn't know what the hell's going on because he's like, "We don't have pirates, but everything was set up by Stephanie, and Carla's a Stephanie follower." So she ends up being in a position where she does try and blame it on Olivia, saying that Olivia, is because Olivia blew everything out of proportion. But because Leon was there, he was able to be like, "No, you sent an official request. Why are you coming to me? You set this up, and I can ask the pirates what's going on." So she ends up breaking. She tells Leon and them everything that happened about Stephanie and whatnot. So they what they did was they took everything from the pirates as compensation, and they left the pirates with the family, more or less as slaves. So they're on their way back, and as they're on their way back, they meet the leader of the pirates and a small group of them of other pirates, all working for Stephanie, working with Stephanie. So they fight them. Um, well, they fight them, but one other thing I forgot to mention on the way back, as they were going back, Leon, more or less, he went to Olivia, and because of everything that happened before, um, Olivia more or less she pushes him away. She she tells him, how do you see me? Was that my body you were after? He tells her no. So she gets upset, more like, she understands she's a common, and Angelica is better and whatnot. So she pushes Leon away, and Leon ends up reflecting on it, and he can't really say anything because in a sense he did keep a distance between them because he felt that she was the main character, and she belongs. He's trying to set the story right in the sense that he believes that she does belong with the prince or one or the other in his group. So he leaves it alone, but in doing so, he used to call her Olivia as a nickname, being on friendly terms with her, he goes back and starts calling her Miss Olivia. So he he reflects on that during the night on their way back, and he does fight um was it Greg? Yeah, it was Greg. Um, the purple haired guy with the that's in the Prince's group. They end up having a little fight, more or less. Greg is like, I need to surpass you. So it wasn't a serious fight. It was just like the duel from the first volume. It was just a quick little something. He's determined that he has to get better than Leon. So that happens, and then in the morning, they end up meeting the pirate captain and his crew. So at this point, Leon is kind of still pissed off with what happened with Olivia. He fights his captain. The captain kind of hits him and sends him flying, but he's pissed off. So now he's taking it out on everybody. Um, the two in the Prince's group, finally this time they say that they want to better themselves. So they do end up coming to Olivia's aid, because when this is going on, Olivia sees everything that's happening outside, and she starts to worry for Leon. And she realizes that she kind of was a bit too hard on him the night before. So she comes running outside. At this point, Luxion, being an AI and controlling everything on the ship, he's trying to stop her with other robots on the ship, but at this point now her powers start kind of showing the fact that she's the saint, so she's able to paralyze the robots and just run through to the outside. So as she gets outside, the captain of the pirate sees her and is trying to capture her. So the two from the Prince's group now comes in, and they start protecting her because they borrowed armors from Leon. This time they were actually ready to fight. So they fight, they stall, whatever, while Leon is going on a rampage, being pissed off about what happened between him and Olivia. So he beats them, and then at this point, the two from the Prince's group that was with him, they end up losing to the pirate captain, and more or less now Leon comes in to, you know, beat him. So they fight. Leon beats him real easy, and at this point, he's kind of going overboard with it a little bit, because again, he's taking it out, his anger from what happened with Olivia out on the pirates. So he beats the pirates, and he gets one of the artifacts needed for Olivia to fully become the saint, be recognized as a saint, which is the necklace. Gets that from the pirates, and in doing so, you know, after everything's done, Olivia goes to heal um um Brad. I said Greg before, but I think I meant to say Brad. But Brad is the one with the purple hair. She heals him, and in doing so, Leon comes down and he's like, this is how it should be. So she gets a little confused, and then they go on, they start talking, but she notices he's calling her Miss Olivia. So now he's putting a bigger gap between them than before, where he was calling her Olivia, and now he's now calling her Miss Olivia. So that happens. She's like, no, please, to herself, she's like, please stop calling me that. Call me Livia, like how you used to. So now a gap is forming between them, and they get back after the whole pirate subjugation. Um, Now there's a fireworks festival going on afterwards. Like after they return, everything's after the festival, everything. Um, well, it's like fireworks and whatnot at another festival. At this point, oh, another thing I forgot to mention. I keep jumping back and forth, but Angelica did go back to apologize after everything that happened with the bike race. She bought a gift for Olivia, and she went back. Then after the races and everything that happened, this happened after the whole confrontation with Olivia and um, Stephanie. So Olivia had already left with Leon, but Angelica didn't know this. So she bought a gift and she went to go see Olivia. When she did that, she realized that they Olivia's room wasn't actually a room. They stuck her in a supply closet. Now, even though it was a supply closet, she also realized that the room itself was completely messed up. Everything was broken. Writing was everywhere. And then in doing so, she's like, what happened? But then Stephanie again comes up, starting trouble. Now she's really pissing off Angelica. She lets Angelica know everything that's going on and how Olivia went with Leon with the pirates to go stop the pirates and whatnot. So at this point, Angelica is more or less understanding everything that's going on. The whole Carla situation was because of her. She sent Carla after Leon and the whole pirate thing and whatnot. So Angelica's pissed off. She picks her up and she lets her know, if anything happens to either Leon or Olivia, she will destroy her. So she ends up leaving and running off to try and chase after them, Leon and Olivia. So as they're on their way back, um, we get back to the whole pirate thing. Leon and them on their way back. Um, More or less, Angelica did catch up with them. She's in a Red Grave ship, her family. But not only that, the Earl ship, the Stephanie's people, they also got there to try and cover everything up. So Angelica more or less gets over there. She realizes that Olivia's feeling down, so she more or less slaps Leon and is like, "What did you do to her? Why is she so sad? Whatever." So again, Leon is pushing both Angelica and Olivia away because he feels like he shouldn't be associating with them, being the main characters of that story, the whole Otome game. So he's pushing them away at this point. Um, so yeah, now we get to the whole nighttime festival thing that's going on. There's fireworks and whatnot. Um, there's a specific part in the game where um, there's a person who sells charms. These charms more or less enhance different things, be it magical or physical or whatever. So Leon goes to the seller and he's trying to buy their whole stock. At this point, there's a rift between him, Angelica, and Olivia. So everything from this festival is kind of told from Olivia's point of view. She wants to apologize to Leon, but she also wants to talk to Angie. But they haven't really been together like they were before, so it's hard. Angelica starts having her following again. They trying to butter her up, trying to get back, in her good graces because of everything that happened. But Angelica's kind of sick of them. She's really trying to get away from them. So what happens is, like I said, Leon was trying to buy all the charms from the merchant that was selling them, and Olivia heard what's going on, and it sounded like somebody was in trouble. So she ran to go see what was going on. And in doing so, she sees Leon with the merchant harassing him, like, "Let me buy all your stuff. I'll pay you whatever you want." But the merchant's like, "I can't do that. I did this for everybody during the festival." So she ends up meeting Leon there. But what happens is Angelica also heard it, so she ends up also meeting both Olivia and Leon. She ended up ditching the people that was following her. So they both drag Leon away from the merchant so that he can do what he has to do. So they end up going to a shrine and they they say like a prayer and try and pray for whatever that they wanted. So after the prayer, what happened after the prayer? After the prayer, Merchant comes back. The merchant's grandmother, the original person who ran the shop, she heard about the whole Leon thing, and she decided, well, if you really wanted to buy our charms that badly, there's two left, and I'll give it to you. So Leon ended up doing the pulls for the charms, and what he ended up getting was one white charm and one red charm. The white charm, more or less, was a charm that based itself on healing, which was good with Olivia, and the red charm was more of a magical charm, which boosted magic. So he gave that one to Angelica. So he ended up giving a charm to both of them, which comes back later on in this volume. Um, they end up going their own separate ways again. Olivia didn't get the chance to say what she wanted to say, um, because it all started with, at this point, Angelica's group that was following, they caught back up to her, so she ended up running away, leaving the two behind. And then Leon just, he leaves her by herself. He's like, all right, well, this happened, whatever. Gave you all the charms. I'll see y'all later. He's just trying not to be involved with them. So that goes on, and then this whole thing with the fireworks. This was like a trip that they took. They was separated. The classes was separated into three groups. Each group went to a different area. So they went to that place with the shrine and whatnot, and on their way back the next day, back to the school from the trip, um, they're on their way back to the school, and on their way back they get attacked by another country, more or less. This event wasn't supposed to happen, according to Leon, till later on towards their third year. But everything, because of, I guess, what Marie did and everything that happened, all the events in the game started being shuffled around. Things weren't happening when they were supposed to happen. That was also true of what happened with the pirates. That wasn't supposed to happen until later on, but it happened early. So now, they're under attack by the Thanos kingdom. Um, what happens is, um, that kingdom ended up coming to fight them. They weren't actually stronger than um, the Angelica and the kingdom, the empire, whatnot. There was actually a weaker kingdom, but they ended up getting a hold of this one flute. This flute now has the ability to control monsters. So they used the princess of that, the Thanos. Her name, Bertrude. Um, she was using the flute to call on monsters to, more or less. There was just an advance party just to survey everything and whatnot. But they ended up capturing the students, being that it's a whole bunch of noble children. They'll be good pieces in the upcoming war that they was trying to set up. So when they did that, they boarded the ship with all the students, and they said, all the nobles, um, come forward. We're gonna take you back. You're more or less prisoners. Um, the crew and everybody else, get rid of them. So now Angelica steps forward, and she's like, I'm Duke's daughter. Take me and leave everybody else, because she has the highest standing as opposed to everybody else. So in doing this, Leon gets pissed off, and he was about to step forward, but now everybody held him back. So in seeing this, um, they more or less beat him up, and they let them take Angelica, and then they imprison Leon on the ship. So now everybody's relieved. Okay, Angelica, she saved us, whatever. But it pisses off Leon, because it's like, y'all just let them take Angelica, and y'all, all of y'all was her followers. Y'all left her alone after everything that happened with the duel. Y'all pushed her to the side. Now y'all trying to suck back up to her. because of all the trouble and whatnot. You're trying to get back in her good graces. Now you're left her alone again, and just to save yourselves. So it pisses him off. Um, Chris was with them. Chris being the blue head guy that's in the Prince's group. He comes to Leon afterwards because after everything that happened with Angelica, they took her off and they decided, well, we don't need anybody else, so we can kill them all. So now they're in trouble. So now they feel like they need to rely on Leon. So Leon's like, I'm not doing it. I'm not helping you. Why should I? So Chris begs him. He says no. So Chris feels like, okay, well, I can't blame you after everything. He starts walking away. But Leon's like, let me finish. I won't help y'all. If y'all want to, come out of this alive, y'all gonna have to help yourselves. So he sets everything up with Chris. They bring all the students um together, and Leon more or less um he pushes all of their buttons. He sets it up where he lets them know that they're all frauds, how they're supposed to be nobility and whatnot, but they more or less they were so happy when Angelica um she stepped up to sacrifice herself and nobody did anything, and how they're fakes, they're not real nobles. So he pisses them off. Um, what he did was he used one of the another earl's daughter. What's her name? Deidre, Rosewood. He uses her more or less. She had the second highest standing after Angelica, so he pushes her buttons in the sense of telling saying all of what I said about not being nobles and whatnot, and she riles up the students more or less. We'll show you that we are real nobles. Our forefathers wouldn't be disappointed at us. They wouldn't be laughing at us right now. We are real nobles and whatnot. So he gets everybody in a position ready to fight. So now he he more or less he tells them to fight, whatever. He's gonna go save Angelica. So he takes this he what I forgot to mention earlier was he did get a bike from Clarice after everything that he did for Clarice, more or less after he won the races. Remember when I said he told Jilk, the green haired guy, that he owed him a favor? He more or less made him go talk to Clarice and settle everything with her. So after he did that, Clarice more or less, you know, she finally let him go. She's like, he's not worth it. I'm gonna leave him alone now. But she kind of took an interest in Leon after that. So her family ended up sending Leon an air bike. So he used that in his efforts to save Angelica. So Angelica now have been taken by the other group. Um, she's there and she was like, they're gonna let them go, but then they told her that they don't need them anymore, so they're gonna just kill all the students because, like Leon said, they said the students are cowards. They just let them take Angelica like that, so we don't need them. We're gonna get rid of them. So now, after everything that went down with Leon and them, they launch a frontal attack on them, a surprise attack more or less, because they gave the students some time to just prepare. Like, we give you like an hour. After the hour is done, we're gonna come kill you all. So after the whole talk with Leon and the students, they launched a surprise attack. More or less, they went straight after them first. So they weren't prepared for that. So Chris, more or less, he led the charge of the students. He had an armor, and he took care of like whatever was around, protecting the students, while the students more or less pushed forward into taking over their ship. So Leon ends up getting on the bike. He goes through, he breaks through their defenses and gets to Angelica. He more or less saves her, and after everything that happened, he realizes that he does want to be friends with Angelica and Olivia. So they kind of make back up, and there wasn't really much between them aside from like what I said. She slapped him earlier, and he was putting distance between them. So him and Angelica kind of make back up in that sense. They again become back on good terms. But at this point, I believe Angelica does realize she's starting to like him a little bit. Um, so now they save Angelica. They kidnap the other princess and the flute. So now they have an upper hand on the enemy. Um, now Leon had told Luxion to send for his armor, being that he kept it close by on standby just in case anything bad happened. So his armor ends up coming, and now Leon is suited for battle, and they go to battle. They fight. The other side had a Trump on their side. They had the Black Knight, who was more or less their trump card. He's a very old guy, and he's very experienced in fighting and whatnot. So they felt like even if anything happened, they had him. Everything would be fine. But Leon being Leon and all the cheat stuff that he has, Luxion and whatnot, they ended up getting into a fight. Um, Leon wins, even though he had a hard time with him, being that from the game's perspective, that Black Knight guy was supposed to be like one of the final enemies in the game, but Leon ended up fighting him a lot earlier than he should have. He he's one of the few people that actually managed to damage Leon's armor a bit, and but Leon still came out on top. He beat him. While this happened, at all the fighting that was going down on the ship, um, Olivia and Angelica ended up more or less coming back together and fixing what happened between them and confirming their friendship. Now, what happened was beads that I told you about. Number one, the white bead that he gave to Olivia, it more or less now finally this was what Olivia's problem was. She felt like because she was a commoner and she couldn't really do anything for them, she couldn't help them out. But now she has her healing powers. The white bead more or less boosted it, and now she's healing everybody. She's guarding the ship with a shield and everything. She's contributing now as opposed to before. So now she feels like she's at a better step to be friends with them. So she reconciles with Angelica by Angelica now. She joined the fray, the fights. The bead that he gave Angelica, the red bead, it boosted her magic, and she's able to cast these big fire spells that she had trouble with before. So all this goes on. Piece of the ship ends up breaking. Angelica, starts falling off, but Olivia rushes to her side and she grabs her up before she can fall. They reconcile. Everything's cool, but now she pulled up Angelica, but she ended up falling over the side, and Angelica couldn't catch her in time. But this, since Leon was done with his battle and everything that happened, he was able to come and save Olivia. So in saving Olivia, she starts talking to him. She's like, he's still calling her Miss Olivia at this point. So she's like, call me Olivia. He's like, he explains to her like, there's other better people out there that's better suited for her, like the prince and his group. But she rejects all of that, and she more or less confesses to him that she loves him. So, like I said, Leon had already at this point determined that okay, I do want to be with both Angelica and Olivia. So he doesn't want to push them away anymore. He realizes that he really does like them, and you know, well, he might not be able to be together with them because of status. Olivia still being a commoner, and Angelica being too high for him. That but he still wants them around. So he starts calling her Olivia again. They make back up, and everything's settled. They beat everything. They head back home. So after doing this, everything that Leon accomplished in this volume more or less boosts his rank from a baron all the way up to viscount. He jumped like 3 ranks this volume. So he went from like a lower fifth to an upper fourth rank noble. Now he's a viscount. So his opportunities for marriages more or less went up. He's at a higher rank. He can take higher rank people. He's still not at a rank where he could take Angelica, but he's going up. Now at this point, Clarice and Deidre, the two the two the two girls more or less, Clarice being Jilk's ex fiance, and Deidre, the girl that he more or less fooled into rallying the students on the ship. They start taking interest in him, and Angelica noticed this, and she's like, she needs to find somebody from her faction to marry Leon to, because she can't let two of them have him, more or less. At this point, like I said, Olivia has fallen for him, and Angelica has more or less fallen for him, but ranking rise, they can't. So that happens, and now Leon is in that position. So everything goes down, and now he's back on at his home in his barony with his parents and whatnot. Everything has been going well for them. He's been sending them money, and the barony has shot up from where it was at the beginning of the novel in volume one, at the bottom. It's actually been raised up pretty well because of him. So now Leon is, after everything that happened, all the pirates that he beat and everything, he ended up getting his hands on a whole bunch of airships. So he more or less gives the airships to the students at the school, the boys, and he more or less tells them that he wants to build a factory for the airships that'll do maintenance and whatnot. This is all a cover for. I mean, it'll make him money. It'll help him, build up his funds and whatnot. But it's also because he wants a place where he can more or less have his own factory with Luxion, so that all the stuff that they need, he has it at his disposal, right, when he needs it. But he's gonna use this factory as a cover. So he sets that up, and at this point, um, Angelica and Olivia ends up going to Angelica's house. They wanted to go with Leon, but they decided against it. Um, Leon's at his territory, setting everything up, and Angelica and Olivia now being friends again, closer friends. They're together, and Angelica's helping her because she was like, going forward, she's gonna need more than academics to, because Olivia's really good at the academics, but she's bad physically. She's not good. She's out of shape, more or less. So Angelica teaching her horse riding and stuff like that. And we get back to Leon now, who, remember I told you he had gotten the necklace from the pirates. Um, the church more or less comes after him because they found out he acquired the necklace. So they tell him he has to, hand over the necklace because it belongs to the church. So he does that, and then, you know, they end up letting it slip that Marie, who earlier on in this volume ended up going into the dungeons searching for another piece of the what you need for to be recognized as a saint. She ends up getting the bracelet, and she goes to the church and tells them, she's the saint. She's been practicing her healing to be better than anybody else, but again, Marie doesn't realize how much she's messing up the story. She's not the saint. So even if she gets all of this, that title still belongs to Olivia. But now she's more or less pushing her being a fraud as the saint. So That's obviously not gonna work out. But she claims to be the saint, so they come after it, the necklace, to give to Marie. So now Marie has obtained the bracelet and the necklace, and the church themselves already have the staff. The three items needed to more or less claim yourself as a saint. So Marie has claimed herself to be the saint. Um, Leon is pissed off because he's like, "What is this girl doing?" He knows at this point that she's another reincarnated person like him, but he realizes that she's messing up the story, and everything that she's doing is messing up everything. So yeah, the novel more or less ends on that note, with Marie more or less gathering the items for to recognize her as a saint, and that more or less covers the whole volume for volume two. Next time, I would like to talk about volume three, but I have a little problem right now in the sense that I have volume two, I have volume one, I have volume four and five. I don't know where I put book three. It's somewhere around here, so I have to look for that. So in the meantime, before I actually get to volume three, in order to keep uploading and keep on track with what I'm doing, I'm gonna talk about this book next. Um, I'm the evil lord of an intergalactic empire. This is what I will talk about next, and hopefully by then I'll have found book three, and then I can get back to this. But what I might do is I might do this book next, and then volume two of this, because this only has two volumes, and then I'll move on, back onto this volume three. So that's about it. Um, that was volume two. Um, like I said, volume two should cover everything in the anime. Going forward. So going forward, volume three onwards will be stuff that's out of the anime. At least if they don't renew it for another season, or if it's not, just 12 episodes. So volume three onwards obviously is going to be spoilers again for anybody who's just following the anime. But hopefully, um, I can talk about it more next time. Well, not next time, because like I said, I'm going to be doing this book next time. But when I get back to the series, you know, it's all going to be spoilers now from it, for real now, for here on forward. So, you know, that's about it for volume two. Again, I'll be leaving my Discord down in the description. Just, hit me up with some comments on what you think of the series, or anything that you want to talk about. Like I said, you can join my Discord. Um, I'm more than willing to have more in-depth conversations about these books. I'm more or less just summarizing and talking about it, but I wouldn't mind, just talking to anybody that wants to talk to me about it. It doesn't even have to just be about the novels. If you want to talk about the anime or the manga or anything, I'm more than down. Just so, like I said, my Discord will be down in the description. And thank you again for watching. I'll see you next time with this book. And all right, later.